Well, hey guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to build video number 2 in the Skymaster SU30 series. I feel like this plane is tiny, but we have just a part of it put together. So anyways, build video number 2, we're hopping into the surfaces, reinstalling the gear. Let's get busy. So naturally right now it makes the most sense to put the main landing gear back in the aircraft because they're done and they're ready to go back in. But we have to do our Flaperon servo mounting right in this area right here. It's got a shaft that comes out and interlocks with the Flaperon surface itself. So it's going to make more sense to get that done before we reinstall the gear, because with the gear out, we've got better access to that area. So I'm going to get that stuff organized, check the manual over, pull the parts over out of the bags, and we will get that done next. Okay, so this is the actuator for the Flaperon surface, so nothing's hooked up here, this is just installed. So you have a stainless steel shaft, it looks like. It's half round shaped-ish, and there's a actuating arm that goes on the internal side that the servo is going to operate. And that shaft, or that arm, interlocks with this part of the surface right here. So what we're going to do as a first step here, obviously we've got the wing laid out. This surface, there's a little piano wire that goes through all the hinge points. So we're going to pull the piano wire out, take the surface off, and just inspect everything in there with the surface off to make sure we're happy with everything that's been done. Okay, so the Flaperon setup is a little bit confusing here because you've got two different bags of materials. So number one bag, I'll just call it number 1, it's not labeled as number 1, has kind of the rounded L brackets that are shown in the picture right there. Problem is those rounded L brackets don't come with the right hardware. Bag number 2, these guys are the sharp L brackets right there. So the problem with the sharp L brackets is these look like the right ones to use. They're in the bag of right hardware. Problem is that the spacing here, which mounts to the fuselage right there, is not correct. So you have to use the rounded off ones. Hopefully that shows up well. But the rounded off ones, the spacing between the holes is a little bit tighter, and this actually fits with the blind nuts that are already installed. So use the rounded off ones, but use the hardware from the sharp ones. All right, so we've got one of our aileron servos set up here. You can see that we use the roundish angles like we talked about, and we've got our arm set up at 90 degrees. It's a little confusing how this all goes together, but if you just study the pictures and the orientation on the plane, it will make sense. So we're using a carbon MKS horn, and we have drilled our own hole for a clevis. And I think that is going to work out well. All I did in this scenario was match up the actuating arm that goes on the surface. So here's the actuating arm. So right now it's perfectly symmetrical. I don't know because the manual doesn't tell us what kind of length here to use. So we're just guessing at this point with this arm. If we need to change it, we need to change it, but hopefully that works out good. On another note, I just figured I would explain this, why I drilled my own hole. So a lot of times the stock holes, like the ones that come in most servo arms, they don't work well for clevises. So I put this clevis in here, golden clevis, and there's a little bit of play in the stock hole. If we drill a 1/16 hole like that, it's actually a very tight fit, which is what we're after. We don't want any play in the system. So that's why I'm not using that stock hole. You may look at that and say, well, it's really close. Why didn't you just use the stock hole? That's the reason why. All right, so that MKS servo is basically perfect for this application. So I've got one bolt put in there, no Loctite or anything. This is just to get it installed and see how it all lines up. So a couple important things that I've learned from the picture is you want your servo output shaft towards the back of the plane and facing the outside edge of the plane. Now when we look through the top of our blind nuts here, it's going to be hard to show that on camera, but all of our holes in our brackets line up perfectly. So all I'm really doing here is just seeing how everything lines up with arms and all that stuff before we do our final fastening. All right, so I believe these pictures here are from Gen 1, and Gen 2, which is this kit, is actually absolutely brilliant. So let's take a look. It's a little difficult to see what the differences are. If you look here, you kind of just have to guess on everything, and it's a bit of a struggle when compared to the new kit. So on the new kit here, there's actually a slot that the arm moves in, which gives the surface a perfect amount of travel. And the other nice thing about this is it prevents the arm from being pushed in too far. So this arm has movement in and out, right? So we can also pull the arm out a little bit, turn it, do up our fixing screw, and when you're putting on your surface, it's going to go back in, and when it's in that little slot, it's actually in perfect alignment to the servo arm. This is a brilliant change on Skymaster's part, and I think this is going to make setting this up much easier than I expected. All right, so our arms here didn't come with any hardware. I'm assuming there would be one of the internal set screws there, but I went through my Skymaster bin and I found some 4mm little tiny stubby Allen screws. So we're going to use these instead. I'm using these ones because there's really going to be no interference. It's wide open where this arm is. So these are going to work perfect, and they also allow better tightening. All right, so we've got our servo plugged into our central box there. Now the linkage isn't really hooked up. It's kind of just, it's hooked up on one side and it's just sitting inside the servo arm, but we still have the ability to move it and get it centered. So what we're going to do in this case before we do up our linkage is we want to have the servo center matching up to the servo center on the surface. So we've put our carbon wing tubes in, or spars, and what we're going to do is install the wing now. I can tell you though, it looks like it's probably skewed down a little bit, but we'll just put the wing on, check it out, see how it fits, adjust our linkage from there, and make our adjustments based on what we need. Okay, so we've got our wing installed here. So what we know that we need to do is we need to get that servo linkage adjusted to get the aileron surface leveled out, is what we need to complete here. All right, so left aileron flaperon is complete. So here's the movement in normal mode. And we'll go to takeoff flaps and landing flaps. So we'll have almost zero down movement, and up movement is normal. So before we move on to the next side, what we're going to do is just check over a couple things here. First thing we want to check over while we've got access is there's two bolts holding the gear air cylinder right there. We want to check those guys, and the wheel lock system, which is down there. We want to make sure we check those fasteners. Those are the types of fasteners you always want to check on a plane like this. I always find they're loose. Doesn't matter what manufacturer it is. When they show up, they're loose, and we want to make sure we also check over that type of thing as well. Like always, I like to share my thought processes with you as I go through this. So while I'm doing this installation back here, I'm also thinking about my wiring and how things are going to be run. So that's why I've put the tanks back in here and just checking to see where we're going to run the wires. So we're going to run the wires on each side of the tank that go backwards. Now there's not tons of wires going backwards. This aileron surface here, flaperon surface, is the most rearward item that goes all the way forward, along with the central box that we're going to mount right here. That also has two leads that go all the way forward. So some initial thoughts and planning. We're going to have our connection for the flaperon right here. There's going to be a lead that comes over right in this area. One of the leads that goes to the central box we're going to have come down this side with that flaperon wire, and that's going to go forward in a snakeskin piece to the front of the aircraft. We've got 5 wires, or 2 leads, one for lights, one for our slats, that come to our wing. So there's going to be a connector right here. Again, those are going to come in and go forward. So those are really The items that need to go forward at this point, that's just initial planning. We're gonna do the same thing on this side with that flaperon and that wing. All right, so our right wing is all complete to match our left. And speaking of wings, did a little bit of rearranging in the shop here yesterday. Thank you, Ward, for your help. Built another plane rack. We need to move that in place, do some rearranging back there, get rid of some pails from house construction. But anyway, speaking of wings, we got the SU30 wing package from Revit. Beautiful wing package. There's a lot of surfaces on this plane to hold. One of the other things that this package has is the stinger bag. So the stinger is like the chute area in the back. That comes off for transport because it's very long. So there's a separate bag for that. And of course, they're logoed up with the lighter side of RC. So now that we've got the flaperons completed, I think the next thing we're going to move on to is we're going to finish up the wings, which means we're going to get the slats done. And then we can do the wiring into the fuselage and then do the wiring from all those things forward. That's the plan. Usually we deviate from the plan, but we'll see what happens. And of course, no sooner than I turn the camera off, I realized that we need to deviate from the plan just a little bit. So we did get the gear installed. I never showed that, I don't think, in the first video, but the front gear's installed, looking very dapper. The plane's on an angle right now, and looks really good. I'm glad we painted all the stuff silver. I think it looks really sharp. I believe we're going to also weather these things as well, which means using some oil paints and stuff. We're going to do that near the end of the build because I don't want to be working around this and have the paint still wet. So anyways, that portion looks phenomenal. Of course, we Loctited everything, just got the bolts put back together, and the steering is absolutely rock solid. So the deviation from the plan is we need to reinstall the main gear now. So we're going to get that done. And then we're going to continue on with our original plan. All right, so our right gear is reinstalled. I just have to do up our brake line here. So what I'm going to do, rather than zip ties on the leg, is we're going to use our 3/4mm clips. These are available on our website. And what I like to do with these guys is I'll figure out my routing path. So in this case, I'm going to put a clip here and probably one right up here. Now I'll just take my Dremel and just do a little bit of a mark on the aluminum. That helps the CA to have something to grab to, and we'll just glue those on with a little bit of CA. Okay, so both gear are now installed. We're gonna see if we can get this aircraft on its gear on our adjustable workbench and give that a try. So we got the aircraft up on the adjustable table on its gear, which is perfect because now we have the table down all the way, and working on this is very, very convenient. All right, so we're moving on to the slats now, and we have the right wing here. We've taken the tape off the slats. I actually took the pivot pin all the way out just to inspect things. Everything looks good. Now the way the slats work, it's actually a really great system. This is very common amongst a lot of big Skymaster kits, so I'm quite familiar with it. The picture here actually shows a very good description of how it works. So you use a very, very short arm, and a set of bearings fits into the carbon arm here, and it pushes the carbon arm down, and basically it bottoms out almost or essentially touching the top surface of the wing. And then of course when your servo rotates, it goes back like that. So it's a pretty simple setup. What we're going to do is we are going to get our servos out. We need to find some servo arms, and we'll come back and take a look. All right, so working our way on these slats here. So just wanted to give you an idea of what we're doing. I put the servo together wrong. It should be this way. Hopefully that works for the other side. So anyways, this is the way the servo is supposed to be oriented. We'll check the other wing and see if that one actually works for it. So anyways, we've got the servo, we've got our arms here. So I took the carbon fiber MKS arms, drilled out the closest hole. We need that to be drilled out for a 3mm size. And then we basically make a contraption here where we use the button head on the outside, and we've got a bearing spacer, bearing, spacer, spacer, spacer. Then it gets screwed into there, and then we've got the nut that goes on the back side. Obviously, it's important that we make sure that everything rotates without any interference, but that's really the setup here, and it's fairly straightforward. When the slat is zeroed or up, it's going to be like this. When it's activated, it comes down like that. Okay, so we got our servo set up here. I'll tell you exactly what we're doing. So we've got the arm just placed on the servo. Just from experience, I've set this up. So one bearing against the button head, a spacer, a bearing, two spacers, and then the nut on the back side. You can see there we're clear of the servo, so we got enough space for everything to rotate, no interference. So what happens now is we get this lined up, and then you can see how it's positioned on the carbon rod. So you really want one of your bearings at least fully inserted in the carbon rod, which we will have. The other one there, it's more about just having the adjustment and having a little bit of the shaft passed. On the Skymaster, like the F18 as an example, when you've got your direct plug-in of your rear stab, you want both of those bearings to be contacting the receiver portion. In this case, the carbon actuating arm is only one bearing wide. So our servo doesn't fit in the pocket here because you have to take a little bit of material off the sides here, and Skymaster will orient their tabs based on how the servo is supposed to go in. So usually there's a cutout here on this side for the wire to clear the tab. They never used to do that. This is a nice thing that they started doing. And so we'll take our Dremel and just open that up a little bit. Okay, so we've got this roughly installed. Now what you're looking for here is you want obviously proper contact with your arm, but really the next thing we're concerned about is having enough room for our servo fixing bolt, which we don't have right now. So I need to take a little bit more off of the tabs that the servo mounts to shift the servo towards the tip of the wing. All right, so we've got everything set up perfectly here. So we've got a good space for our servo fixing bolt. We used a button head one, so it's got a rounded profile in case anything catches. We're on our servos or our bearings, and that looks good. So next thing I'm going to do is drill my holes to get this mounted. Then I'm going to pull the servo out, and we'll start figuring out our wiring and how we're going to get that to here. And then we also have to get one from the wingtip, which is going to be a challenge to get to here, I think. All right, so this servo is essentially ready to go in, but before we do that, we want to figure out how we're getting that wingtip light to the root of the wing. That is a problem. When I shine a light through here, there's actually no path from even the servo to this hole right here. Now there's a rib that goes right there. So I drilled a hole through the rib, and now we can see light, and I can pass a wire through to the servo opening. And then what I did is I took my stiff fencing wire and ran it alongside the ailer or the leading edge pocket, and I was able to get that straight all the way down to the wingtip over there. So there's a clear path down the leading edge of the wing, bringing us to the wingtip. Now this is the tip setup. This is the right wing, but we're upside down right now. So these have no pre-done mounting holes, but we do have our keyholes already made, and we've got our light wire mounted here as well. So obviously Skymaster didn't route this through the wing because there's really no clear path. So what I'm going to do next is figure out how this is getting mounted. We'll do our little pocket here for our wire to go through, and then we'll try and feed that through first. I'm more concerned at this stage about getting that wire through to the root of the wing, and then we can worry about getting our tip installed. Well, and I tell you, we celebrate the wins and we mourn the losses here at the Lighter Side of RC. And you guys know that I share our struggles with you, but also our successes. First try, just ran that straight through. I made the opening here at the tip to match the tip tank or the rail. I just basically ran that wire straight through and it slipped right through, no problem. Okay, so we got our wires run and we've got them just run in between each other there just so we can get this tucked up tight. So what I did now is I ran the wing rail here against the wingtip, and we just marked out where the keyholes, where the furthest forward point of the keyhole matches up on the wing with our trailing edge of both items matching up. So what I'll do now is I'll just take my Dremel and just kind of open these areas up a little bit. I don't know if there's any structure in these areas. It would be nice if there was a blind nut or something, but we're wide open right now and I have no idea. So I'm going to do a little exploration here and see what it looks like. All right, so there's no blind nuts or anything there. There is some, I think it's probably balsa wood in these areas. So I've drilled some holes. I've threaded our screws that are designed for the keyholes here because the head just fits through. And what I'll do now is I'll soak this balsa in thin CA, and then we'll put some CA in there, get the screws installed, and the screws are going to stick out a little bit here so they can interact with the keyholes. All right, so we've got everything done. The wingtip is on. That looks awesome. And our wires have been run to, well, the wire has been run to the aileron pocket, sorry, the leading edge pocket. And we've hooked up our power box maxi wire. We're just going to pull that through here, and we will have the wiring run to the root. That's pretty awesome. I'm excited about that. All right, so servo's all ready to be installed. We've got our shrink tubing on here. As I always say, don't use the servo extension to get your distance. Always bundle it up. If you ever need to change the servo, you want to be able to just take the cover plate off and have access to that connector. You can see there our wire lengths are proper for the wing connector. So we've got the wing basically wrapped up except our cover plates. I'm leaving the cover plate off so we can get the leading edge all programmed. We've done up our connector here so the snakeskin goes through the structure that our wires go through. So now there's some relief on the structure so it's not going to cut through the wires. And I've used ashlock connectors. I always use ashlock connectors pretty much 99% of the time. One of the things I love about them is you can quite simply plug in a servo lead here and now we can operate that servo and get it programmed. So here is the slats in action. We've got everything programmed now. So this is normal flying mode. I'm just going to show you the actual arm here doing its thing. That's takeoff and full flaps. Full flaps, the arm is very much straight up and down, so mechanically it works really well to lock this in place. And here's some shot of the actual action of the surface. Regular flying, takeoff flaps, full. All right, so last step with this one wing is we need to get the cover fit here. Now, one of the advancements I've seen Skymaster do over the years is actually get our panel lines lined up. They used to include panels, cover plates like this that would just be so random, they wouldn't even remotely be able to line up. I mean, you could switch them all over the plane and it wouldn't matter. So thank you, Skymaster, for actually getting these things lined up properly. So we just did a little bit of sanding on two edges here. It's a nice tight fit. So all we do is drill 4 holes in there and then we'll just countersink them with the countersink bit. And we'll use the small Skymaster screws right there. Okay, so our cover plate's done here. I just touched up the screw heads with a white paint marker. It works very nicely. And next thing I like to do is I like to get my wiring location done on the fuselage side while we're here with the wings. So from the center of the fixing tab to the center of the hole, rearward, I've measured that distance. So center to here, we've got our mark right there. Now I'll use my awl tool and I'll open this up with a little hole so I can put a through fitting in there and then we can run our wires through the through fitting and get our ashlock connector on the wing side done up. So we've got our ashlock connector run on both sides here through the fuselage. Now for the through fitting, I like to use my Festo through fittings. This one happens to be a 6mm size, which works great for like 2 to 3 wires. And I've got snakeskin starting from here that goes all the way to the front of the fuselage. We'll take a look in a second. These are available on my website. They do come in 8mm sizes, 6mm, 4mm sizes, and they're very handy for situations like this. So we've run our line in snakeskin to the middle of the fuselage and then forward. You can see the snakeskin right there. And that comes to the front of the fuselage. Now we didn't go all the way forward on the wires because all of our light control stuff is going to be in this area right here. So these are light control wires, same thing on this other side, right there. So it just makes the most amount of sense to put our light controller in this area. There's nothing else forward for lights. There's all the gear here, which would run nicely into this area. And then I think there's some stuff on the back of the plane that needs to come forward as well. So naturally that makes the most amount of sense to put the controller in that area. All right, guys, and that's going to wrap up video number 2 in the build series of the Skymaster SU30 aircraft. Making some good headway on this thing. This video obviously was basically all about the wings. Next video, we're going to start to get into the rear surfaces, the vertical stabs, horizontal stabs. That'll be the focus of that video. Don't forget, guys, to check out the lighter side of RC After Dark. It's a completely separate channel where we do live streams here from the shop every 2 weeks for about 2 hours. Tons of fun. We always have some special guests here, and it's fun just to see the behind the scenes stuff and also have some camaraderie. We also get the opportunity during that live stream for you guys to interact, ask questions, all that type of stuff. The other thing is we started a channel membership as well. There's some links down below in the video description. If you want to see channel videos earlier than they're actually released, you can get a channel membership. It's a monthly thing, and you get the opportunity to see content that is scheduled to be released, but you may be seeing videos 2 weeks, 1 week, a couple days in advance. So check it out if you are interested. And the last thing to tell you is we have another channel coming up. We are going to be doing podcasts from this channel. It was just created today, which this video is coming out well in the future. It's called the RC Air Experience, or RC Air Experience. And it's going to be fun. Partnering up with my friend Anthony, and we'll be doing some podcasts. We've already got our first 4 videos or 4 interviews planned, podcasts planned. So check that out if you're interested. We'll link down below in the video description as well. Thanks, guys, for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.